A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 51st edition of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. The last webinar that we had was the 50th edition. We could honor a few of those guests who have been part of this journey for the last so many months. But once again, we wish to put on record our gratitude and our thanks to each and every one of you who have been part of this journey, making this the largest thought-sharing platform in Indian school education today. For that, we could not speak enough to tell you how grateful we are. Today, we take on a very important topic, the power of language. As you all know, the new education policy stresses on the use of vernacular as a medium of instruction. Well, it has two sides to it, right? One is the teaching of language as it is. All of us growing up, we have studied something called a first language, a second language, and at times a third language. Some people had foreign language as optionals. We have all been given the rudiments of some language as part of our curriculum. On the other side, the use of language in the classroom, the language in which a particular student is taught. Is it the language of comfort, something that the students feel comfortable in? Or is it the language of discomfort, getting the student outside his or her comfort zone where learning occurs? Today, we will take a deep dive into the power of language as part of our school education system. At Notebook, we are an edtech platform. We make short, crisp videos that help students learn better and also helps teachers use these videos as part of their class, be it an online class or an offline class, where these videos can then become part of the teaching. The language part of it has been very close to our hearts right since the beginning. We realized that in India, besides the students who study in ICSE, CBSE, or IB schools, there were a huge number of students who study in state board schools. These students have a very different take on the medium of instruction, which means tackling multiple vernacular languages, which means tackling English as a subject through a vernacular language, which is something we at Notebook have tried to do. And the results that we have seen, particularly in the two state boards where we have created content in Hindi and English for Uttar Pradesh and in Bengali and English for West Bengal, we have seen some phenomenal results. Before we start today's session, I will just give you a brief walk through our journey with state board content which are bilingual in nature.
नमस्ते बच्चों, नोटबुक में एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है। एडिसन के माता पिता उनकी भावनाओं को समझते थे। उन लोगों ने हमेशा एडिसन की सहायता की तथा उसके साथ साथ खड़े रहे। एक दिन मुर्गियों को अंडे सेवते देखकर उनको ख्याल आया कि मैं भी अंडे सेऊं।
In today's lesson, we will have a look at Edison's childhood and try to find an answer to this question. Thomas Alva Edison was born in 1847 in Milan, Ohio, of the United States of America. He had a curious mind ever since he was a child. He would ask many questions and want to know the right answers.
थॉमस अल्वा एडिसन का जन्म अमेरिका के ओहियो राज्य के मिलान में सन 1847 में हुआ था। एडिसन बचपन से ही जिज्ञासु प्रवृत्ति के बालक थे। अपनी जिज्ञासु प्रवृत्ति के कारण वे बचपन से ही खूब प्रश्न करते और उनके सही सही उत्तर भी चाहते।
A year or two later, he started printing and selling his own newspapers. He made enough money to establish a small laboratory in his railway wagon. One day, some phosphorus fell on the floor of the railway wagon and fire spread throughout the wagon. This accident made Edison lose his job in the railway.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as you just now saw, the journey with bilingual videos is quite interesting. It starts with a synopsis which is completely in the vernacular language. The student understands the story, the concept in a language most familiar. And then a lesson happens, which is done in English, along with vernacular instructions and explanations. And then finally, the whole topic is again recapitulated completely in English, giving the student a hand-holded journey from completely vernacular to completely English. Well, that said, it is now time to introduce our first speaker for the day. Our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Barrett. Mr. Barrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education. He served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Barrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Shabayu. I hope I'm audible.
Sir, I've stopped saying loud and clear, so I'll say you're very clearly audible, sir.
Thank you so much. And a very good evening to you, Achin, Abhishek, the Notebook team, as well as our two esteemed panelists, Mrs. Nafees and Mr. Srikant, and to all those people who have tuned in this evening. Initially, I wanted to speak about the new educational policy, but I found it so confusing that I thought I'd take another route through this topic. The power of language, the need to communicate, I think, is insatiable. And from from the early animal sounds that we made, and from the drum beats of the African pom-toms to the tongue-clicking languages still used by the Kalahari people, to the modern day, refined dialects and their accents, we've always felt the need to use something to get our ideas and opinions across to others. But language is not the only means of communication. We use mime, music, art, and other forms. And people say that 20% of communication is verbal. And so therefore we use our bodies to communicate. And even though all of animal life seems to be able to communicate through sounds and of touching of feelers and the flapping of wings, there seems to be no doubt that the ability that humans have in the language that they possess and with all the subtleties and nuances and the scripts that they use, it makes us really special. Now, I want to give our audience a small little quiz, and I'm going to ask Shabayu if he can just put up my questionnaire so that they can see the various blurbs. And I would like you to see if you can identify which product they advertise. Shabayu, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I'm going to launch the poll now. It should be up on your screen just in a second. Yeah, it should be up there. So as you can see, there would be a list of taglines for brands, and you will have to choose which brand do you think had this tagline or has this tagline.
And we'll give you 2 minutes.
Yes, actually there are a few more questions. So if you can quickly finish these 10 questions, I will move on to the next 10. I am yet to see the votes come in. If anybody in the audience could quickly raise your hand to tell me if the poll is visible.
So these are very catchy catchphrases. I'm loving it. Men will be men. Make it large. King of beers. These are things that we hear all day. But attached to this, there's a message. There's an image in our minds, which we will remember. So let's see if you can get as many as you can. Even if you get 10 right, you do very well.
So we've had to do this in 3 parts. So we'll, is it okay if we take this part by part? We'll stop at 1 minute, 30 seconds for the first part.
Yeah. So I'm loving it. Men will be men. Make it large. King of beers. Finger licking good. Have a break. Have a what? Think small.
So we have stopped this one. We'll go on to the next one in a bit. Before that, just putting up the results. So don't give out the answers just yet.
Okay, I won't give out the answers.
Yes, sir. So we will now go on to the next one. Another set of questions on your screens coming up now.
Because you're worth it. Impossible is nothing. The ultimate driving machine. The city never sleeps. The world's favorite airline. Quality never gets out of style. Just do it. It's everywhere you want to be. the best a man can get. Where do you want to go today?
So we'll again give people about 90 seconds on these.
Yes.
So first one, because you're worth it. Second, impossible is nothing. Third, the ultimate driving machine. Fourth, the city never sleeps. Fifth, the world's favorite airline. Sixth, quality never goes out of style. Seventh, just do it. Eighth, it's everywhere you want to be. Ninth, the best a man can get. And the 10th one, where do you want to go today? So I think we've quite a few quizzers out there. People are
Okay.
getting the right answers more often than not.
Very good. Very good. That makes my point actually.
I'll end this one as well because we
Yes.
have passed 90 seconds and move on to the third one. Just a last 4 or 5 questions, which should be up on your screen by now.
Okay. Think different. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the power of dreams. Taste the thunder.
Because we have fewer questions, we'll just give half the time. So let's see how many people get right in 45 seconds. And that's the 45 seconds mark.
Yes.
So what I will do is I will share the result poll by poll if you could walk people through the right answers.
Yes. So I must say that the first one, McDonald's more. Yes, that's right. Imperial Blue, very much a 50-50. You all got Royal Stag, which tells me something about all of you. King of Beers, I think, was wrong. It's got to be Budweiser. Finger looking good is, I'm sure all of you are eating KFC. That's great. Kit Kat is right. Volkswagen Beetle is the answer. Amul, scores the highest. 96 is right. De Beers is wrong. The real thing is Coca-Cola. Have it your way is Burger King. You got that right. Very good.
So I'll move on to the next one.
Yes. Because you're worth it. 50-50. Actually, the answer is L'Oreal. Impossible is nothing. Adidas is right. Ultimate driving machine is BMW is right. City never sleeps. Most of them got right. The world's favorite airline is British Airways, which 80% got right. Levi's is never goes out of style. 64 got it right. Nike has made a great impact on all of you. Most of you got it right. Visa is also very high percentage. Best a man can get is also very popular. That's 91% who got it right. And 10th, I think, is Microsoft.
Yes, so that was Microsoft.
Yeah, it's not.
Uber was the confusing option there.
Yes, very well confused. But I think amazing. Only two of the questions were, let's say, more people answered it wrong. Think different is Apple. You're right. Then the MasterCard is correct. A Power of Dreams is not Hyundai. Hyundai would love this one, but it's Honda. Taste of Thunder is absolutely right. Most people got it right, 81%. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now, what this tells me about language is that these blurbs have got into your heads and have created an image that is stuck there. And that's exactly what the ad people want to do. So see, look at the amount of, look at what language does. It plays on your mind and it stays there. Many of these ads will change and they'll go out of fashion, but they'll still stick in your head. Now, the need to find new ways of communication, communicating better and faster, has moved man from the training of carrier pigeons to the discovery of papyrus, to Marconi's wireless telegraph, cell phones, fax machines, the invention of Braille, Morse code, decoding machines, email, and we don't know where we're going next. what would the world be like if things turned silent when there was no sound? We people cannot even bear going into the forests and being quiet. When people go on picnics, they take music with them. When people are silent, it confuses them, it upsets them. And then imagine what the blind go through, or the people who can't hear go through. Now, if we all spoke in different tongues, again, there will be confusion, like the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, where God made everyone, all the workers on the tower, speak in different dialects. All work stopped. And it is from here, the Tower of Babel, that we get the word babbling, where we speak in a tongue that no one understands. And that's why it's very important for us to work in harmony and live as a tribe or as a family, to be able to understand the language of the tribe or the family. Each tribe, each family, each community, each people have their own language. A common connecting language can forge a sense of belonging to a family, group, or tribe, and give it also a national identity. Yet, there are so many people who speak the same tongue who are at war with each other. And I have seen complete strangers sit for hours communicating, even though they don't know what the other is saying. Now, in the Western world, English seems to be the common link language, but the French, being proud of their tongue, barely speak English. Mandarin is the most spoken language in the world, while Spanish, the language of South America, and Arabic, Bantu, and Swahili would be the most popular languages of the Arab and African nations, respectively. Now, take a look at India. We are faced with the problem of having a plethora of languages. Hindi, of course, being the most common, all dialects included. But in the South, you'll have a problem because they don't speak Hindi. English, therefore, became the link language until to date. I mean, even though it was a legacy of the British, but the British were not people who taught English. It was not the British who taught English. They did not want more than just their children educated in public schools, and they wanted a few clerks to run the British Raj. Most of the country was untouched, and a large chunk of people were left out of this learning of English. They all spoke Hindi. Most people in India, surprisingly, are trilingual or bilingual at least. They speak their mother tongue, they speak Hindi, and they speak English, which is very, very, it's wonderful to know that most Indians are bi and trilingual. Now, in the South, as I said, Hindi is not spoken as much as in the North. And therefore, students transferring from, let's say, Hyderabad to Delhi would find it very difficult to cope with Hindi. Now, from West Bengal in the east to Marathi in the west and Tamil in the south, the language issue of India is a difficult problem to solve. It is often humorously said that there's only two things that unite the people of this country, and it's not language. One is cricket and one is Hindi movies. I once got off a bus late in Pondicherry, and using my little Tamil, I asked this little 16-year-old Tamilian if he spoke Tamil, and he answered me in fluent French. If I spoke French, parlez-vous français? I mean, the people of Pondicherry speak French and Tamil, and that's all. Now, you only have to look at a baby, look at his, just watching his mother and copying the sound she makes and the shape of her mouth to understand why we call the language we first learn the mother tongue. And the mother tongue is the language where we think, in which we think. I once had a Bengali headmaster who was educated at Cambridge, a very, very erudite man who spoke English better than most Englishmen, who once told me that he still thinks in Bengali. It is so true. We think using an unspoken language, which was his mother tongue. Words help us think. They give meaning to our thoughts. Ideas and thoughts are translated through words. So apart from the thinking in a language, I believe a language colors the way we perceive the world. I agree that we need to learn one's mother tongue till class 5, as the new education policy has stated. But it is very, very difficult to understand in my state of Uttarakhand, what is the mother tongue? There's Garhwali, there's Kamavani. So it's very confusing, this education policy. Now, in most schools that I have studied or taught or visited, the medium of instruction has been English. Hindi has been a second language. And there's usually a third language, which ranges from Sanskrit to French to the state language. Nowadays, a lot of schools are moving to the International Baccalaureate or the IGCSE, where Spanish, German, Mandarin are offered to get away with the problem of their mother tongue and the local dialects. Now, let me move to something else. The inherent metaphoric nature of language and the possible implications of this are interesting. Language reflects how we perceive the world and various concepts such as gender, sexuality, race, etc. Which is why a clever child is called bright and one that's not so clever is called dull. A heterosexual person is called straight and someone who's not is called queer. We call members of the family who are not doing well black sheep of the family. The good guys wear white and drive a white car, while the bad man drives a black van. So color drives the way we think and the way we perceive people. We talk about Africa as a dark continent. We talk about angels in white. We draw devils in black. Now Finland, for example, is a genderless language. Hindi and French see everything as either male or female, while English sees living things as male and female, but non-living things have a neuter gender. It is interesting that Eskimos have over 36 words for snow. Sanskrit has 96 words for love. The Greek language has 80 words which mean love, and English has only one word. This tells you how important love is for these people. Some languages like Hindi have many words for relationship. You have mother's brother is called something, the cousins are called something, there's bhabi, there's masi, there's chachi or chachi, there's jiju. While in England, everyone's an uncle, aunt, or a cousin. This tells you how important Indians, or what importance we put to relationships. Now, it is also interesting to see the possible links to historical or etymological roots of certain words. For example, we know that the word dexter is a Latin word from where we get dexterous, which means right-handed. And the the Greek word for right-handed is droit, from where we get the word adroit. So people who are right-handed are called dexterous and adroit. And if a child in class is left-handed, well, the word is sinter, which leads to the word sinister, or gauche in French, which is for clumsy. So straight away, we have a bias towards right-handed and left-handed people. Now, there are many, many Greek and Latin words that form the root of English words. But so has Hindi crept into the English dictionary with topi, juggernaut, pajama, Kashmir, dinghy, thug, chutney, bungalow, tandoori. These are all Hindi words which are now in the Oxford Dictionary. The way we use language emphasizes the value we give to things. Take, for example, time. It reflects the culture of a race. Now, in England, a watch runs. In France, time marches. In Germany, watches function. And in Spain, a watch walks. And therefore, we have this Anglo-Saxon value of time. Time is money. Don't waste time. And we look upon the Spanish and the Mexicans as lazy and slovenly people, because for them, the watch walks. Now, our history books speak of how the Europeans come to new lands to make a better living. But the slaves were bought from Africa and the railroad were built. But what the language leaves unsaid is that the Africans were chained and their homelands destroyed. And the slave trade is what brought them. And what they leave out is that the railroads were made by underpaid Chinese labor. So language is so important. It changes the way we look at things. Now, language also affects the way we stereotype gender differences. Consider girls are told to sit properly. Boys are told not to cry. Children should be seen and not heard. It conveys compliance to what adults want. We have the male is called the lion. The female is called the lioness, tiger, tigress. It almost seems that the lioness is less than the lion. We also put Mr. Goyal before Mrs. Goyal in all invitations. Why is that? Now, language also colors our moods. Take the colors, for example. You have black moods, you're feeling blue, green with envy, white is for purity, black is for evil, purple for royalty. When we see red, we are angry. When we wave a white flag, it's a sign of our defeat. And the use of language in politics is so important. We see how tyrants and leaders use language to incite the masses. They control the media, while person who's a rebellious man, he's called a rabble raiser, is put away. In some countries, even talking about freedom can get you into a jail or even executed or sent to a labor camp, because it's not the words in themselves, but the ideas that these words carry. Now, a word can spread a message which leads to an idea or a mass movement, which can arouse masses and spread change. Now, non-verbal language is also very important. I think Shabayo has gone through the slides where the Tiananmen Square, the man stands in front of a tank. These two pictures for me are the best non-verbal messages that I ever think of. Just those two, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, raising their fists, say so much. That is language in action. And that young man standing in front of those tanks is again a classic example of non-verbal messages. That's why they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Also, the power of the small word no. We think that no carries more authority than the word yes. But I always told people the word yes also carries authority. So saying no more often than yes is not authoritative. I think one should say yes more than no to children. And lastly, I just say, look at the Nike ad. That ad, most of you got right. It's such a catchy ad. Just do it. There was so much controversy over these three words. Just do it. Young children thought it was a license to do what they wanted. And the other controversial ad was of the young man believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Now, he was a football player. His name escapes me. American football player who who stood up against racism. And so Nike used his picture, again, a very controversial ad, because it was saying something. It was saying that racism in sport has to go. And finally, I want to just say, take a look at the abusive languages. Now, abusive language gives children power. That's why children use it. Just think of a group of adults sitting around quietly one afternoon, and two little kids use a word that they shouldn't use. What will the adults do? They'll jump up. They were sitting down, now they'll jump up. Can you imagine the power the kid feels? Now, with that said, I want to hand this over. Thank you so much for listening to me. And back to you, Shabayu.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very, very refreshing take on the power of language. And as you said, 20% of it is verbal, the rest of it non-verbal. Thank you so much for opening for us, sir. Once again, this has been happening week on week, and we really don't have new things to thank you with. And with that said, it is now time to move on to the next speaker that we have today. Our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO of Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, he was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. Achin is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and an associate member of CPA Australia. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is the recipient of the Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you. Achin, you there?
Yeah, Shubham. I'm here. Good evening, everyone. Shubham, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, good to go.
I welcome all of you again to today's session on a very important topic, the power of language. This is one of my personal favorites. And considering recent developments with regard to NEP 2020, this definitely assumes special significance. It's a very contemporary topic. Recently, I was listening to an interview of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the architect of new NEP. There's no doubt about it that he and his team has done a phenomenal job to ensure that they have put the new policy in place after considering needs of different stakeholders, opinion and views of all divergent groups. And he made a very interesting point. As you're aware, in the new policy, it is advocated that up to grade 5, children may be taught in their mother tongue, and up to grade 8, mother tongue may also be used. Bilingual and 3-language formula has been advocated and explained in great detail. Dr. Rangan made a very interesting point. He said that if you talk to any Nobel laureate or scientist in Europe, chances are more that he'll explain a complicated scientific concept in his mother tongue. The fact that they study in their mother language definitely helps them in understanding these complicated aspects. Now, definitely a food for thought, no doubt about it. With regard to NEP and with regard to the opportunities and challenges that this brings in, especially with regard to languages, I'm sure our esteemed educators in the panel, they will throw light on this. I'll try to keep my deliberation at a more holistic and macro level and discuss some facts, some very interesting facts about languages, and also some major conflicts around the world where languages played a very important role. Now, to start with, between 1950 and 2010, globally 230 languages went extinct. According to UNESCO, today a third of world's languages have fewer than 1,000 speakers left. So out of every 3 languages, 1 language has less than 1,000 speakers left. Of the estimated 7,000 languages spoken in the world, linguists say nearly half are in danger of extinction and are likely to disappear very soon. In fact, they are now falling out of use at a rate of about 1 every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we end up losing 1 language. Now, over 220 Indian languages have been lost in last 50 years, with a further 197 languages categorized as endangered, according to People's Linguistic Survey that happened in 2013. Now, coming back to UNESCO, according to UNESCO, any language that is spoken by less than 10,000 people is potentially endangered. In India, after the 1971 census, the government decided that languages which are spoken by less than 10,000 people need not be included in the official list of languages. But why are we discussing this? What happens when a language dies? When a language dies, its speakers decide to migrate. First, they migrate to another language, and then they physically start migrating to another region. The second thing that happens is that their traditional livelihood patterns go down. They may have some special skills that disappear. Thirdly, a unique way of looking at looking at the world disappears. Every language has a unique worldview. For instance, if in a particular language there are only 7 colors, naturally, anyone who speaks that language, his worldview is with regard to the 7 colors, right? Any 8th color coming in for him or her is a combination of any 2 or 3 given colors. Thus, a language uniquely influences a person's worldview. But how do we conserve a dying language? It's very simple. We need to create livelihood and support for speakers of the language. If they have livelihood available within their language, nobody will want to switch from their language to any other language. Now, we have discussed about the importance of a language. We discussed about some hard-hitting facts. Now, as I told you, let's take a closer look about some important conflicts around the world and how languages had a major role in it. Now, to start with, United States, for example. In the United States is a perfect example, considering the fact that it's a melting pot of immigrants from around the world. When US was founded, only 40% of people living within its boundaries spoke English as their first language. Today, that 40% has increased to 87%. So 87% of US residents today speak English as their first language. But how did this change happen? In 40 and 87, it's a huge jump, right? What happened since 1776 is a matter of history, of contest, conflict, even persecution. In southern states, for example, slave owners and traders sometimes cut out the tongues of slaves unable or unwilling to speak English. Yes, it's that harsh. When General Benjamin Butler was commanding the Union troops occupying New Orleans in 1862, he had some francophones executed, specifically some scholars, to discourage the use of French. There's another fundamental reason to look to language as the source of tension. It is more tangible than race or religion. Scholars increasingly understand race to be a fiction. Belonging to one or another group is more a social and historical matter than a biological one. It can be difficult to tell by looking at a person to which race or ethnicity she considers herself to belong. Very often, a Serb can look like an Albanian. Similarly, you can pretend a Jewish person as a Christian. But if he speaks a different language, you can't pretend. It's on the surface, it comes out, right? It's very easy to understand. Now, coming back to what we were discussing about United States. Now, when US declared war on Germany during World War, boycotting German was the first step. And legislation against the language quickly followed. No German titles were published during the war. Sheet music dealers refused to handle German songs. At least one American Berlin, a city in US which was called Berlin, was renamed Liberty. Even German foods were rebranded. We saw some examples, similar examples in later years, like during Iraq War, French fries would become freedom fries. The America of World War I, German fried potatoes become American fries. Across the country, state and local ordinances forbade the use of foreign language, urged immigrants to switch to English immediately, and punished those who failed to comply. For instance, in the state of Iowa, the governor banned the use of any foreign language in public, in schools, in the streets, in trains, even over telephone. Now, during those times, President Roosevelt said, America is a nation, not a polyglot boarding house. There can be but one loyalty to the stars and stripes, one nationality, the American, and therefore only one language, the English language. Such attitudes had a chilling effect on language use. 18,000 people were charged in the Midwest with violating the various new English-only statutes. Now let's come closer home. From US, let's come to our next door neighbor, Bangladesh. As we are all aware, post-partition, there are only two countries, India and Pakistan. Pakistan comprised of West and East Pakistan, which is today Bangladesh. In 1948, Governor General of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, declared that Urdu and only Urdu would be the federal language of Pakistan. However, Urdu was historically prevalent only in the north, central, and western region of the subcontinent, whereas in East Bengal, the native language was Bengali. The government stand was widely viewed as an attempt to suppress the culture of the eastern wing. The people of East Bengal demanded that their language be given federal status alongside Urdu and English. The language movement began in 1948 as civil society protested the removal of Bengali script from currency and stamps, which were in place since British Raj. The movement reached its climax in 1952 when on February 21st, the police fired on protesting students and civilians, causing several deaths. Now, this day, February 21st, is celebrated in Bangladesh as Language Movement Day. Later, in 1952, UNESCO declared 21st February as International Mother Language Day. And this happened in 1999. So in 1999, UNESCO declared this to be International Mother Language Day. The language movement catalyzed the assertion of Bengali national identity in East Bengal and later East Pakistan, and became a frontrunner to nationalist movements, including the 6-Point Movement and subsequently the Bangladesh Liberation War. The rest is history. And post that, the bravery of our armed forces, flow of events, and a new nation was born. So language, we can see, has such a big influence on the way a nation thinks. Now, in any country, in any culture, we see people always tend to find comfort in groups. Now, these groups may be formed based on various categories. It may be economic bifurcation, the rich and the poor. It may be geographical variations, geographical bifurcations, like loosely referred to. Likewise, language is one of the major binding factors. Now, from Bangladesh, now let's go a little far and look at Ukraine. Now, this is really interesting. As all of us are aware about recent armed conflicts in Ukraine, what has been happening between Ukraine and Russia. Now, for centuries, Ukraine's long struggle for statehood has been mirrored by often troubled fate of the Ukrainian language, oppressed and marginalized throughout the Tsarist and Soviet eras. Ukrainians finally shed its second-class status in 1991 to become the official state language of the newly independent Ukraine. However, this is only the first phase. What happened since then? Now, despite the upgrade of Ukrainian as a language following the collapse of Soviet Union, the language has continued to play second fiddle to Russian throughout much of the country and in many aspects of everyday life. Ever since 1990, efforts to regulate and promote the use of Ukrainian in place of Russian have proved politically explosive. There's a very interesting incident. I'll come to it in a minute. Very, very interesting incident about these two languages and how important it is and how it shapes public opinion, how important it is for general public, for politicians. Now, it has come to symbolize the independent Ukraine's post-Soviet identity crisis. Meanwhile, the national debate on language issue has reflected lingering divisions within Ukrainian society over attitude towards the dominant role played by Russia in the country's past. Now, this kind of politics over language does not reflect the day-to-day reality of Ukraine, where very often these two languages are commonly spoken and widely understood across the countries. But Russian is spoken mostly in cities, but in rural areas, Ukrainian dominates. But the linguistic fluidity of the country is such that it is not uncommon to hear both languages spoken in a single conversation. At times it happens. As Barrett also mentioned, it's very common to see languages getting intermingled, words flowing from one to the other. Now, despite this apparent progress, the language issue retains the power to provoke extreme response within the society. Now, very recently, there was an incident which I would like to share. A Facebook user in Ukraine posted an image of McDonald's electronic menu screen featuring only 2 language options. Now, this happened in Ukraine. So a Facebook user posted an image of McDonald's menu and there are only 2 language options. What were they? English and Ukrainian. Now, what was the result? The user also mentioned that Russian language option has been removed. Now, almost it's a 50-50 split. 50% people speak Russian. The post was a simple light-hearted post, but it quickly went viral. And viral to such an extent that a politician picked it up and claimed that this once again emphasized the negative attitude towards half of Ukraine's population that speaks Russian. Now, this scandal became so big that it developed a diplomatic dimension with Ukrainian embassy in Washington, D.C. tweeting its thanks to McDonald's for the company's firm position on the language issue. And the Russian embassy responding to it by accusing the fast food giant of excluding minority languages. So imagine a menu at a McDonald's joint being referred to in tweets by diplomatic circles and 2 embassies getting involved. Embassies in Washington, D.C., both Ukrainian and Russian embassies, engaged in a series of verbal duet through tweets. Now, as tempers flared, few seemed to care when McDonald's officials clarified that they never actually had a Russian language option in company's menu. But customers were welcome to order in Russian if they preferred. It seems trivial, but it underlines how language sensitivities can be manipulated by anyone wishing to destabilize the nation. As Ukrainian society continues to address these disparities created by generations in every sphere of public life, there are various flashpoints which still exist. Now, efforts to popularize Ukrainian language among youngsters very often compete with the overwhelming influence of contemporary Russian pop culture. Now that's a huge force, very strong force to beat, right? Now against this backdrop, there was a new language law in 2019 that came in that country. And it's broadly in line with public opinion. There was a poll which was conducted, language poll, conducted by a foundation called Democratic Initiatives Foundation. And that poll found out that 69% of countrymen in Ukraine favored preserving Ukrainian as country's only official state language, while maintaining the freedom to use Russian in private life. So this clearly shows how far it goes, right? Now, we understand that how important language is, and this is only one way of looking at it. When we discuss about power of language, there can be various other dimensions. We can go to the grammatical aspect and explain the significance of how we frame a sentence, explain the significance of a simple comma in a sentence, which can completely change the meaning. That's another way of looking at the power of language. However, I prefer to take a more holistic view. Now, we really want our children to be global citizens, and that's a legitimate dream. But according to me, it's equally important for them to know about their own culture, history, customs, tradition, and languages. We cannot deny the fact play a very important role in it. We were discussing about worldview. Each language has a unique worldview, right? We really want our children to grow like tall trees. But the deeper the roots, the taller the trees will grow, and towards the sky they will reach. If you do not have a complete sense of your own culture, then you cannot appreciate the diversities of other cultures. Then you cannot, really appreciate. The stronger your roots, the more you realize the shape of other cultures. If you are confident, only then you can reach out and exchange ideas without feeling insecure or the need to imitate or ape others, because you understand that you have a legacy, right? You come from a very rich culture of thousands of years. Now, this is a very interconnected world, and always it has been so, from times immemorial. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing, and I look forward to hear from the views of our esteemed panel. I really thank the panel for taking their time out and being here with us today, and I really look forward to the deliberation of this issue. Thank you. Over to you, Shoaib.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think you really give us a truly around the world view of the power of language. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the bit that you have all been waiting for, the discussion that we'll have on the power of language. We are very privileged to have two very distinguished speakers with us today. We have Mrs. Asna Nafees, who's the principal of the DPS Modern Indian School in Doha, Qatar. Ms. Nafees is a postgraduate in zoology with a professional degree in education. She started her career as a teacher at the TVS Lakshmi School and later served as the principal of the Crescent Girls Residential School in Tamil Nadu. A young achiever, she achieved this distinction at the age of 35. She's had the distinction of being selected to travel to Brazil as a member of an international group study exchange program under the aegis of Rotary Club in September 2010. It brought Ms. Nafees to the shores of Doha, where she became the principal in 2011, and under her leadership, the school has received the accreditation from the Ministry of Education in Qatar. She's taken part in various panel discussions, especially on inclusion, and has won the Award of Excellence as the principal of the DPS Modern Indian School for producing excellent results in grade 10 and 12 board exams for 6 consecutive years. She has received letters of appreciation from CBSE and the erstwhile HRD Minister of India, which is now the Education Minister of India, for encouraging inclusion in schools. She has expressed her passion in inclusive education in various educational magazines. She has attended and conducted several professional training programs on leadership and communication, career guidance, value education, counseling, etc. She is passionate about inclusion and understands that respecting and promoting diversity is one of the major roles of leadership in today's world. She's often referred to as the people's principle. Ma'am, welcome back. We are very privileged to have you on the panel again and looking forward to your deliberation. We also have with us Mr. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Srikanta Rath, who is the principal of the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya in Phulbani, Odisha. As you might be aware, the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas are co-educational and fully residential schools and funded by the Ministry of Education. He started his career as a lecturer in physics at the Ramaji Mahavidyalaya in Bhishmagiri Ganjam of Odisha State in 1988 and worked there up to 1991. On getting selection as PGT Physics in the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Koraput, he joined there in 1991. After continuing as PGT Physics, he got certificates of merit and recognition for a period and got promoted to the post of vice principal and joined with seniority from 2006. He worked in the capacity of principal in charge at Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas of Madhya Pradesh and Odisha State. On getting selection, he joined as principal at the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Phulbani, District Kandhamal, Odisha in 2019 and still serves there. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Welcome to the panel.
Good evening, everybody.
Yes, we will stop the share here because this is when we want to have a conversation. Before I start asking you questions, if I may start with you, Asna ma'am, any opening remarks about the power of language in education?
Yes. Thank you, Shibayu, and good evening to my co-panelist. Indeed, you are speaking to a person who is living as an expat in the Gulf and heads a school with about 5,600 children. And these children come from pan-India, different languages spoken. We also have about 25 to 26 other nationalities on board, which means various languages are being spoken. The local ministry here definitely makes it important to learn a language that is local in nature. The CBSE makes it mandatory to learn Hindi, and the medium of communication is English. And there are about 2 to 3 dozens of regional languages that children speak when they attend school. So I strongly believe that there is a lot of power to the language. One, it connects all human beings, and it definitely has the power to make a society or to break it. Every war that has happened definitely had an agenda which involved language. The moment you remove a language, you make it impossible for a child to get educated in the regional language or the language of the mother tongue. You are taking away a culture or a part of the child from this person. So if you look historically also, whenever societies decided to dominate, one of the major things that they probably did is removed the learning of language. And I strongly believe that, yes, language has a great power. So Shibayu, if you have anything else, you can ask me.
Yes, ma'am. I'll come back to you with more questions. Before that, if I can get across to Mr. Rath for his opening statements. Sir.
Again, good evening to everybody and our panelist members. Really, I feel it very happy to be a part of this webinar and power of language. Language, if we will not use language, then I think what I want to speak cannot be conveyed exactly to others. So language plays a role. If language is not there, then there may be some physical activities, gestures and postures. Through that one, we can communicate our feelings to others. We have already discussed regarding languages and how the languages, 700 languages are there. In every day, two languages are disappearing. And in that case, language is our rich source. And we have to use those sources to develop our education system. And I feel it happy that I am working in a system that is Navodaya Vidyalaya, under Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, which are co-educational and residential schools. The main objective of these schools is a 3-language formula and competency in 3 languages. So the main purpose is to ensure that students attain a reasonable level of competency in 3 languages. Navodaya Vidyalaya system is under Ministry of Education now at present, and it is emphasizing the 3-language formula, and also which is emphasized now in National Education Policy 2020. So education plays a vital role, and in this case, I will say another objective of Navodaya Vidyalayas to promote national integration through migration of students from Hindi to non-Hindi speaking states and vice versa. The explanation of this one will be better. The students of Madhya Pradesh, for example, they are Hindi speaking states. They are coming to Odisha and they are learning here Oriya language. And similarly, our children, they are going to Madhya Pradesh and they are learning Hindi there. That means this is the under 3-language policy. Our children, they move from one state to another, that is Hindi speaking to non-Hindi and non-Hindi speaking to Hindi speaking states for improving national integration. That means language plays an important role in improving national integration also. Language also gives impact on strong culture, component of culture. This is also one of the objectives of Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti. And here, how the values of other states, other areas, other locality, the habitats, their culture, how they come to other states and they share. That is only possible because of the languages and interest to learn other languages, interest to imbibe the cultures of others for for the greater cause of the nation, and also a part of national integration. And these are the only sharing of experiences are also there. The children of those Madhya Pradesh state, for example, Mandla, one of the Navodaya Vidyalaya is there, and from that children are coming to JNB Phulbani. Similarly, our children, they are going to Mandla. The culture of Mandla, the dance style, all the things they come, they display here. Our children, they imbibe it. Similarly, our children also, they go and display there at Mandla, so that the culture is maintained, and these things are all possible because of only language, interest to learn others' language, respect to others, and these are the values of the system also. I think bilingual education is also highly essential for the education system, because for example, certain schools are there, there the medium of teaching is only English. Only in every case, they use only English.
Sir, if I may interrupt you, I really want to pick up this idea of language as a medium of instruction a little later. But as you said, the 3-language formula is something very interesting. So if you look at language as a subject, if I may just get across to Asna ma'am for a bit. Ma'am, in every trip that I've had to the Middle East, I've always marveled at the level of multinationality that you have in anything, be it a mall, be it a movie theater, and I cannot imagine what a classroom would be like. So, how advantageous do you think it is for so many students? You said 5,000 plus students learning multiple languages that are, some would be known to them from at home, and most.
When you move out from your comfort zone, when you are learning your own language, there is most of the time in a country like ours, we are very confused what is the language that should be learned. It's like we may be born to a certain, parentage where a certain language was spoken, and then we were probably being growing up in a place where that language is redundant. So if suppose I am a person who speaks Dakhini Urdu, and I've been growing up in a place where only Telugu was spoken, so I had to obviously learn those many languages. So for children who have traveled from their home country, India, and have come to a place like the Gulf, where you have representation of all states, all subcultures, regional languages, plus the national and international level languages. So there is a demand for learning a lot of language so as to understand and respect each other. First, to respect your own self, your own identity, and then learn new things from others. So in a school like ours, it becomes extremely important that we offer a plethora of languages, just not one language. So children get to choose a lot of second and third languages, which could include Sanskrit, Arabic, Urdu, Marathi, and Gujarati. There are lots of languages that we offer to the children. Then there are also children who have this outlook towards life that probably they don't want to go back to India to settle down. They're probably looking at going abroad to study or to, settle down in life. For them, you have to offer international languages. So we do offer a lot of international languages so as to help our children become better equipped to a global world, a world where probably you could be placed anyway after your education. So, and also that you can exercise your choice in today's world. The world has definitely become a very big village where you could live anywhere and operate from anywhere. So I think it becomes extremely important that you teach the value of your own mother tongue first, and then the value of respecting others' languages and probably learning and imbibing them too.
Ma'am, out of interest, since you have 25 plus nationalities in there and you're offering multiple Indian languages, is there a case of foreign students opting for Indian vernacular languages?
Very surprisingly, yes, we do have students who want to learn a language which is, they're not very familiar with. Like, for example, I may have a Malaysian or a Singaporean student wanting to learn Tamil, which is quite surprising for us. And we do have local students who are Arabic students. Now, these people learn French extensively because they look at going abroad and settling abroad. And it also helps them in the future when they want to graduate or go to a foreign university. So yes, we do have students who opt for other subjects. And very surprisingly, we have this tendency, of in India, I don't know whether I'm right in my opinion, that you have a language aligned with a religion also. Very surprisingly, that doesn't happen here. You can learn Urdu even if you're not an Urdu speaking person. You can learn Hindi even if you're not from the Hindi belt. So I have seen a lot of students from down south learn Hindi in large numbers and even master it. So these, I think, are advantages of living in a multicultural society, being exposed from a very young age to multiple cultures and multiple languages. So definitely living in the Gulf gives you those opportunities to recognize others' language, others' culture, and even try and learn them.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
watching cultures blend is one of the most rewarding experiences that one can have.
Yes.
On that point, if I can get across to Mr. Rath, sir, you spoke about a three-language system, and I found it very interesting concept that you physically move students from one state to another, because then they're not just learning a language, but the culture, the subcultures, the intonations. I mean, ma'am just referred to Dakshini Urdu. I was posted, one of my first jobs was in Hyderabad, and I remember all of us, everybody who was not from Hyderabad picked up that Hyderabadi Urdu to the T, because it was just fun to do. So how does that exactly work? Because if people are getting moved physically from school to school, if you could just take us through that process a little bit and the impact on language.
No, it is not like that. The first it is decided as Hindi speaking and states and non-Hindi speaking states. So basing on that one, they migrate children from one Navodaya Vidyalaya to another Navodaya Vidyalaya, and wherever they are going, they have to learn their culture and languages there, and that is decided at central level, that is Samiti level. If anybody wants to go to a place of his or her choice, it is not possible. It is a policy matter. So that is it. For example, as you have told, that Hyderabad the Urdu is there. So children will be opting language Urdu. There is no hard and fast rule. English will be one of the language. Thereafter, either Telugu oblique Urdu will be there. So, for example, these two languages are common. For example, they will go to a Hindi-speaking state, so automatically they have to learn Hindi. Similarly, Hindi-speaking state child, whenever he is coming, either he will take one of the languages, Telugu or yours Urdu. So that is the interest, and the children also feel very happy to come from one state to another state and to learn the culture and the languages. So this is a very successful system of Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti, migration system, and also a policy which meets the requirements of national integration.
I think it's absolutely wonderful, sir. It's a beautiful system because
really I feel very happy also. Really I feel very happy also that I was given the opportunity to be a panelist member, especially in the concept of power of language. I felt very happy because generally, if you see, many schools will be there, they are only using English. Yes, it's an international language. It is to be given priority. Our country is also giving priority for that one. Constitution is also giving. But local languages are also there. Local languages are also to be given importance so that the culture, traditions, everything will be there with that language only. And many are just like Madam told, some are there, they're inclined, religious bias, this and that were in there. Many more points are there in that one. Culture is also there. For example, sometimes when I was going to Madhya Pradesh, I used to talk in Hindi or English. When the people, they do not understand English and they are not in a position to converse in English with me, then automatically I was switching to Hindi, the second language, and I was communicating and I was conveying my needs, needs and these things. So that is a need actually. Similarly, sometimes I had gone on LTC to South Tamil Nadu and Kerala. There also, people they do not know Hindi many times. Nowadays, not knowing Hindi means they don't, but they will not speak sometimes. So once we know English means we can converse better. So that means there is a need of bilingual and multilingualism, and to have more knowledge of knowledge of languages, especially to avoid such type of inconvenience, especially when one moves from one place to another place. I think I have given a little bit answer to that one.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I think it was very well put. Sir, if I can just come back to your earlier point about mediums of instruction, right? The students are one part of it. Turning it around on the teachers, how we were talking about bilingual classes. If I could just come back to that, sir, how important, because when I was in school, the teachers would start. I went to an English medium school in Calcutta, which would start teaching us in English until the point where it got difficult, and then we would fail to understand something, and the teacher would fall back on the mother tongue saying, "Oh, you did not understand. Now let me explain to you." So, does that still happen?
Yeah, correct. This is a correct point, sir. Actually, when the child is coming from another state, and in Orissa, we use generally our medium of instruction from 6th, 7th, 8th. Actually, Navodaya Vidyalayas are dealing children from class 6th to class 12th. So, generally 9 to 12 standards, it is generally English, and sometimes just like you have told, to reach the concept, our main intention is to give the concept to the children in the education system. Unless otherwise the teacher communicates or conveys or transfers the concepts to the child, then the teaching child-centered education I think will not be purposeful. So in that case, the teacher changes his tune of language and shifts to another language, by which the child can easily understand the concepts. So that is there. But generally, English speaking is there from 9th to 12th, and in class 6th to 8th, generally mother tongue, our own original language, the state language is used. However, we sometimes incorporate Hindi and English to the children so that 6th to 9th class, they read 3 languages: Hindi, English, and our own language, mother tongue, that is Odia. So these 3 languages, the children learn from 6th class onwards when they join. So while discussion, anything, please?
No, sir, I was just listening to you. Please carry on.
Okay. So whenever the child comes, the child comes from a background of primary school where he is fully familiar with Odia medium or English medium. Either Odia or public schools means English medium. But whenever the English speaking child, English medium child comes to our system, at that time, we have to make adjust to the child. And the teacher is coming to the level of the student and communicates to meet his requirements in English, so that the child feels happy and healthy in the classrooms. And for example, the Oriya student is coming from a primary school, and in that case, if the teacher is going on talking in English, then it becomes a problem for him. Thereafter, he comes to the level of the child. Either if the teacher is a Hindi speaking or not belongs to our state, then he has to use no other media. Then he has to take that Hindi or English only to communicate to the child and reach to the child. So that means that this is the system we are following, and the child we are making adjust. We are coming to the level of the child so that the child can groom in the system, and this is a purely co-educational and residential system. So language plays a role, vital role in this case.
Achin, I would have a very different take on this because the type of students that we deal with, they come from, Sir has his own unique set of, challenges. Ours are very different. When the kindergartners come in, probably, yes, we may have to, translate and, change the medium of instruction at times, very rarely, I would say. And we may have to go back to the regional language of the child to make the child understand. But as the child grows in the system, we've realized something else, that as they grow into senior school and they almost are unfamiliar with their own mother tongue or any regional Indian language, and are thinking mostly in English, because language is what you think and only then you translate it. So many a times our teachers have to do the reverse of it. Translate what is given in Hindi or Tamil or Malayalam to English to make the child understand that this is what we are trying to convey to you and this is how it has to be done. Also, of late, what I have observed is that the new world or the new generation that we are dealing with are children who are, learning languages in a very, very different way. I know of my students who are learning Korean just because they have to be along or go along with the K-pop culture. So it's very surprising how a child can learn a language just because of the interest that the child has. There is no training, there's no nothing, it's online. They listen to K-pop music and want to learn Korean language. Similarly, you also have children who speak English with a very, very different accent and diction. Neither the parents nor the school encourages this, but they have learned it because they're sitting in front of American sitcoms, a lot of TV shows which promote a certain kind of pronunciation, which we find very difficult to understand at times as teachers, because we come from more of a neutral English spoken language background. And also the third problem with languages is that when children are from the modern world, their English has become totally different. They speak a language which you and I probably as a generation, maybe Shubhayu could probably match up with the youngsters, but for us, we have to understand what it means. It's like Shashi Tharoor having a conversation with a youngster of today. half the language will not be understood. It's lost in translation. So what they use on social media is something that really we don't recognize or realize. So these challenges are definitely there for the younger generation. Maybe young teachers will understand it, but we belong to a generation probably that is in its 40s. So for us, it is very new to catch up with what they speak. So for our the Gulf background, I would say the exposures are very different because again, English is the common language that unites everybody here. It's mostly English that people speak to be understood.
Ma'am, if I may warn you, K-pop culture is not going to teach them great language either. There's a very, I think one of the most famous songs from that culture is called Pen Pineapple Apple Pen. With such incredibly brilliant lyrics, I sincerely doubt their intellectual outcome.
I have my own doubts about it, but then the interest to understand is what is important, or to learn a language. Children can learn multiple languages if they're really keenly interested. And if you're pushed against the wall, I'm sure all of us will learn languages. I've learned Tamil the very difficult way, and I speak like a native Tamilian. But that is the only person in the family who has been pushed against the wall to learn it. So we have learned it. So any child, if given the opportunity and the right sources, can learn languages. And it's not necessary that you learn languages only as a child. That's a very big misconception. You can learn languages at any age if you're really interested. So being a polyglot is just not a problem of India. It is a problem of all places. You go to Europe, every time you change border, you have a new language to be spoken. So I think learning languages definitely has a big advantage, a very, very big advantage. You're more globally recognized. You have a confidence level where you can walk in and interact with new people, with new culture, new language. It definitely gives you an edge. And in today's global market, so much to do with economy, language and economy. You have, if you know a certain language, you can definitely do business in a better way with people from that country. So I come from TVS school, and TVS, we used to promote Japanese, learning of Japanese language, just because TVS always had ties with Japanese, the TVS Suzuki. So we did get native speakers from Japan to teach our children how to speak in Japanese. And I'm sure those children stand in a better chance if they get opportunities to deal with Japanese culture, Japanese business houses. So they will always be in the front run, and they would get an opportunity which probably others wouldn't be able to take up. So learning languages, yes, I would say we must encourage it.
Wonderful, ma'am. It's very funny how throughout history we have classified a hierarchy of business languages. Learning Japanese was very important a few years back. Before that, it was learning French and German. I think right now it's Mandarin.
Mandarin.
I'll just wait until people get to that acronymish language that young people use nowadays, because I'm quite sure vowels are going to die an untimely death. If I can get across to Mr. Rath, sir, the new education policy talks about teaching in the vernacular language, right? Bilingual classrooms, or in your case, trilingual classrooms. Do you think this might have an impact? And I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. Do you think this might have an impact on the employability of the students who come through the system?
Impact new education policy suggests bilingual teaching, and also it says a three language formula also to continue. Also, national education policy speaks. So the children, they can take also, it says 2 years the child has to read classical languages. There are 6 classical languages are there, and out of the 6 classical languages, they are rich source of culture. So for that reason, they can take 2 years study in the classical languages from grades 6th to 12th, they are telling. And also it is their 3 language formula, what we people are following, our system is following, it will continue. And bilingual teaching, the policy wants. The thing is that the children will be more comfortable in bilingual system, and they understand better. A single language means sometimes they feel not comfort to understand the concepts, and a communication. There sometimes remains a communication gap. For example, concept is there, a particular matter in classrooms, for example, transaction is going on. The textbook is written in English, the child is unable to understand. So in that case, unless otherwise the teacher uses a second language, then the concept cannot reach to the child. So it is having its own importance. It also speaks Indian. Out of 22 languages are there recognized in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. So they can choose one Indian language, English, and foreign language also they can take at secondary level as per their interest and aspiration or choice. It gives to the children. The children, they will think, because this language is also helps in making a career of the child. Because, for example, somebody wants to go to Canada, unless otherwise knowing the Canadian language, then it is a problem. So foreign languages also, it is emphasized in National Education Policy 2020. Regarding teacher point, sometimes it will create inconvenience, but the teachers, because they are the teachers, they will get themselves adjusted to the requirements, and they will come to the level of the child, and it is their duty also to teach. So teachers cannot deny, I do not know the language, they cannot say, because teacher also, they have to know minimum 2 languages, and more than is better. For example, when I had gone to that time, when I faced the interview, at that time it was asked the languages you know, speak, write, and read. At that time I have written Oriya, Hindi, English, and I have added one Bengali. Bengali also have added there, because when I was staying in a area where my father was working, there Bengali people were there, and they have come from refugees. They became the refugees. They came from Bangladesh, and they got settled there at Odisha. So when they used to talk in Bengali, I used to listen very with patience. What they're talking, for what they are using what word. So that is the interest also. For that reason only, I do not know writing of Bengali. I do not know reading. Writing means no reading. So, but I know using Bengali. Sometimes I take interest in learning Tamil language also sometimes, because it gives a very interest. When we use it to talk to others, then they feel pleasure. If I do not know Urdu, unfortunate, but if I will talk in Urdu, then you will feel better that Sir has told in Urdu. So it gives a special impact with whom we are conveying. So the teachers, all the teachers are familiar with English and Hindi. However, for regional language, whenever they are coming to a particular state or particular school, they are getting themselves adjusted, because senior people, teachers, they get adjusted, and they come to the level of the children. So even though it will be a problem for some time, but for a system of Navodaya Vidyalaya system, it is not at all a problem. It may be a problem for others. Because in selection of teachers, a regional language is a need. Regional language is a need. So regional language he is knowing, and simultaneously knowing English. So there is no problem. Hindi we can imbibe immediately. Or any other language, local language, we can know. So I think this is a better idea, and there will not be any problem. It may be for a couple of days, but after that it will not be a problem, and all will adjust to the situation.
Wonderful, sir. Well, sir, you spoke about the teachers having to adapt, and I think if the last few months have taught us one thing, the way teachers adapt to situations for the children's education is something that we Doha had to on a daily basis. Those are the questions I had. I think we had a fantastic discussion. I would need closing statements from you. And at the end of your closing statement, what I would request the two of you to do is please give us one parting statement, one sentence in your mother tongue, and do explain it to us in English as well. Sir, if we may go with you first.
I feel, mate आजिर सेशन बहुत बढ़िया लगिला मते आजिर सेशन बहुत बढ़िया लगिला I feel very happy in this today's session. I am happy with today's session.
Thank you so much, sir.
From Odia and English.
Yes, sir. Fantastic. Thank you
हिंदी
so
में
much.
बोल सकते हैं आज का सेशन मेरे को बहुत बढ़िया लगा. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am, your turn.
Yes. What I would say is that learning languages definitely has a great advantage, especially keeping keeping in mind that we have become a global world. We have families living in various parts of the world, growing. We have literally imbibed cultures from different continents, different geographical locations. And knowing as many languages as possible definitely gives you an advantage, an edge over others. But आपकी मादरी जबान और आप हमेशा जुड़े रहें. अम्मी मेरी हमेशा ये बोला करती थी कि जो मादरी जबान नहीं लिख सकता पढ़ सकता वो कहीं का नहीं रह सकता. अपनी हकीकत अपनी आइडेंटिटी से that it means that keep true to your identity, to your roots, learn your mother tongue. मादरी जबान सीखना बहुत जरूरी है. And just to share that, my mother stopped her education the day she realized when in grade 10 that English was becoming the medium of instruction for her. She said she refused to study. She said, जब तक उर्दू में है मैं पढ़ते रहूंगी. And we have been brought up reading, listening to a lot of Urdu, which my mother read to us, and all types of literature she has read to us. And I think it's very important that we take pride in our mother tongue, in our culture, and educate our children also for it, rather than, keep running after what is called as commercial success. What's more important is cultural success. Are you culturally true to yourself? आप अपनी हकीकत से बने रहें, अपनी मादरी ज़बान से बने रहें. Be true to your identity and to your language, mother tongue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. It's been a fantastic session. I think we've had a great discussion today. I will now hand this back to Achin for his vote of thanks. Achin, yours for the closing. Thank you.
So I think we really had a great session, Shubhayu. No doubt about it.
Thank you.
Barrett, sir, some very interesting opening remarks. And I like the way you initiated the entire discussion. In fact, you set the tone for the evening. Some very, very, very nice points made. And both our esteemed panelists, Ms. Asna Nafees and Mr. Srikanta Rath, I think, thank you for sharing your practical perspective. These are priceless. And some of the things you said, I'm sure really strikes a chord to the audience. Very interesting to know how students are opting for a language which may not be the language spoken at home, but yet, and those choices, as you rightly mentioned, ma'am, are not always restricted or confined to their ethnic or cultural identities. So with a broader vision, they're trying to venture out, learn new languages. Very interesting to know that. A Malaysian student or somebody from Singapore trying to learn Tamil. Great facts. Very reassuring to know this. I think, and also, as Shubhayu mentioned in the beginning, we at Notebook, we truly believe in the power of language. Now, a language is very closely connected with a child's confidence, especially in the formative years, initial years, and especially for first generation learners. For first generation learners in aspirational districts, children coming from not so privileged background, but education is something which everyone is entitled to. At Notebook, We sincerely believe in the cause, and hence, when we started creating our bilingual content, which also is in line with NEP 2020 for state boards, the kind of response we got has been phenomenal, And when I say we got phenomenal response, going by the kind of feedbacks we get, the phone calls we receive, when we talk to students, the parents, we understand that it has served its purpose. Like, as many of you are aware, for state boards, we are using vernaculars to teach English with the objective of giving comfort to a child, so that at least the story is very clear to the child, right? The story is absolutely clear, as it's completely clear, just the way a mother or a sister would explain at home. When it comes to answering questions, there might be challenges with regard to grammar, sentence formation, construction, and we have our lesson videos, and I'm sure teachers are also doing a good job at it. But at least the story has to be very clear to the child. And I can tell this, that as far as the intent goes, I really believe that policymakers have done a very good job in terms of trying to ensure that the intent is very good. NEP 2020 undoubtedly is in line with global standards and is a visionary document for the future. Implementation, see, any policy at the end of the day, implementation is always a challenge. It's always said and done, right? And some of the principles that have been, some of the statements that have been mentioned in the policy, some are short term, some are medium term, and some are very long term. If you look at timelines, even 2030 has been given in some cases, 2035. So 10 years, 15-year vision. Now, implementation, definitely all stakeholders need to come together. I think it's the responsibility of civil society. All stakeholders need to come together and ensure that this intent actually sees light of the day. So the importance of language, the importance of giving a child comfort in initial years, formative years, giving a child comfort, ensuring that, okay, language undoubtedly it's important, but I think it's more important to be able to think. If your thought process is in place, language is the medium of expression, right? As Barrett sir mentioned about a great principal who used to think in his, in his mother tongue, Bengali, and then speak in English. And that happens to a lot of people, right? A lot of people. So I think it's really important to give children that confidence. And we can tell this, the kind of response we have got, and this is based on numbers that we see, has been phenomenal. These videos are very, people appreciate and love those videos, and more so because they get that kind of comfort in this. So I'm sure that this is the right way to go. So I think we really had a great discussion today. And I again thank all members of the audience for their time. In fact, it is with your support that we have been able to do these webinars session after session. We look forward to see you again in our next session. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Many thanks.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank
Good
you, sir.
evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening here, and I don't know what time it is. 2.5 hours difference there. Good evening.
6:40.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I am also very much thankful for the team, notebook team.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir. Pleasure is all ours. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.